One thing that has continued to propel this sport into year-round material, the transfer portal, is continuing to bring the juice week in and week out. We're starting to see more and more of this first wave of guys find a home. We'll talk about that in here in just a second. Travis Hunter, as we mentioned earlier in our live program, is not locked into Colorado. That is not a foregone conclusion that he will join Deion Sanders. Don't believe me. Travis Hunter said it himself. He's in the portal. He's the number one player in the portal. We will make sure that we're tracking his recruitment as closely as possible here on the hard count, but also some other players that are, like I said, committed or set to make a commitment. Going to break down some of that intel for you right now. The number 3 player in the portal, offensive tackle from Rhode Island, Ajani Cornelius, deciding between Nebraska, Oregon, Tennessee, Ohio State. He took visits to all of them. He's going to make his decision tomorrow. We are working to potentially get some content done with him in the near future. Not promising when, not promising what, but just, if you like Ajani Cornelius, stay tuned. He adds physicality. He's a day one player. We're going to break down his recruitment a little bit more later in the program. But for Ajani Cornelius, to be such a proven commodity and to still have 2 years of eligibility left, he's going to help some program, like I said, on day one and likely past day one, meaning he can probably give you more than just one season. So to have a steady bookend on the offensive line in the day and age where that's becoming increasingly important because you have defensive ends that are just built in the lab and run 4.3, 4.4, and they're 6'5". You got to have somebody to hold it down on the edge. Ajani Cornelius deciding tomorrow which program he's going to choose, so keep an eye on that. We'll talk about the fits a little bit later in this program. Fentrell Cypress, fresh off an official visit to Florida State. The RPM at the time of us being live is still leaning towards Ohio State. That would be a huge get for Ryan Day and the Buckeyes to be able to add that to their secondary, a guy who was all ACC. He is a top 3 player in the portal right now. He has locked it down on that side of the field. I think he only allowed 18 receptions on the year. We've talked about him before on here. We're going to continue to talk about him leading up to his commitment. I wouldn't count out Florida State by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just telling you what the RPM says, okay? Fentrell Cypress also has been on record saying he could see himself adding to the DBU legacy in Tallahassee. So is it a lock for Ohio State? Probably not, but those are kind of the 2 leaders in the clubhouse right now, Florida State and Ohio State, with the RPM leaning towards the Buckeyes. If you're not subscribed, we'd love to have you at the party. College football is a 12-month-a-year sport. We cover it accordingly. So make sure you're locked in. Make sure you're subscribed. The hard count, 365, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We got you. All right. So make sure you're locked in. Also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Jody Pickell. A lot of interaction over there we can incorporate into this program. People show. Roll party roll. The number 4 player in the transfer portal, the number 1 quarterback, Devin Leary. I was prepared to do a segment on Auburn, Kentucky. How's that going to look between those 2 schools and how they fit for him? He's taken official visits to both. Before we got on air, Devin Leary said, you know what? I'm going to be a Wildcat. And that is a huge get for Kentucky as they continue to try and trend upward under Coach Stoops and get to Atlanta eventually and achieve that goal, because what they just got in Devin Leary is the most proven commodity in the transfer portal at quarterback. So at the most important position, just added the most proven piece. A guy who had huge NFL buzz coming into this season. You thought maybe this would be the last time you saw him at NC State. You were right, but not because he's going to the NFL draft, because he's going to go play one more year. To me, I think this is 1,000% a NFL draft stock move for him. It is not confirmed, but it has been reported by ESPN that Liam Cohen of the Los Angeles Rams will go back to Kentucky to be the offensive coordinator. Again, at the time of us being live, that is not yet a final decision or a final confirmed fact, but where there's smoke, there's fire. And the reason why I say it's a stock move for Devin Leary, if you want to prove something to the scouts, if you want to show them, hey, I belong on one of your 32 NFL teams, how about you go do it in an NFL offense? How about you go do it at the college level in an NFL system with NFL verbiage, NFL concepts? Like that would do a lot, I would imagine, for your draft stock. Devin Leary, there's no question about what he can do physically. Didn't get to show it as much this year due to his injury, but he's a guy that I would 1,000% believe will be a high NFL draft pick, and I think him deciding to go to Kentucky proves that, hey, all the chips going in the middle. All right, I'm all in on going to the NFL. Kentucky is definitely an NFL move for him in that sense. Auburn also got an official visit. Won't spend too much time on them right now because he's obviously committed to Kentucky, but they were also in the mix, so a huge recruiting win in that regard for Kentucky and company. Dorian Singer, wide receiver from Arizona, he committed to USC. Now, he was the number 11 player in the transfer portal, according to us here at On 3. Dude's a stick of dynamite. All right, 16.7 yards of reception, 6 touchdowns, 66 receptions, 1,100 yards receiving. Last year, he did it all for the Wildcats. Okay, so what this essentially is for Lincoln Riley is just another weapon for that offense. Caleb Williams got the Heisman Trophy in his living room right now. He gets another receiver, and that's going to be a stick of dynamite that's going to make up for some of the production that you're going to lose with Jordan Addison. So this is a big get for them. A guy who is a home run threat consistently, another proven commodity. You just plug and play with how much they want to stretch the field vertically. Just another weapon. And Dorian Singer, a guy who will benefit from how they get down in LA in that system. So a very, very big get for the Trojans there. The rich get richer, to keep it a buck with you. Now, Jeff Sims made news when he committed to Nebraska. Took an official visit there, I believe it was 2 weeks ago. Nebraska also had taken an official visit for Malik Hornsby, another dual threat quarterback from Arkansas. Here's the thing with Jeff Sims. 6'4", 219, 30 touchdowns, 23 interceptions. You say, it's a little bit of an ugly stat. Okay, that's fine. 20-plus games of experience under his belt. And he's a guy that has 3 years to play too. So what that means is essentially if Casey Thompson ends up winning the job for you at Nebraska, no worries. Hey, no sweat. Throw a red shirt on. You're good to go. You got 2 more years to play. So that's the benefit there with Jeff Sims. But the verbiage that comes to mind when you talk about him as a player is tools. And the reason why that's important, guess what you can't teach? Physical, God-gifted ability. Jeff Sims is like Uncle Rico. Throw the football over that there mountains, right? Dude has a bazooka for an arm. You can't teach that. I don't care who your quarterback coach is. I don't care what you do in the weight room. That is something you are born with. Now, the reason why that's important, you still have to harness that. And looking at the numbers at Georgia Tech, didn't necessarily harness it super effectively. Now, do you blame Jeff Sims? Do you blame Georgia Tech? The beauty of it is we're going to get to see. If he doesn't succeed at Nebraska, then you say, all right, the common denominator is you, Jeff Sims. If he does blow it out of the water, then you look back at Georgia Tech and say, hey, sorry, it wasn't a fit. Shake hands, walk away. Bottom line, I think this is a very high ceiling get for Nebraska. And the fact that he has that red shirt, that you can develop him if he doesn't win the job this year, I think that's a big deal. Also worth mentioning, really good athlete with his legs, which they're going to ask him to do in this offense under Marcus Satterfield. Over 1,000 yards rushing on the career, 11 touchdowns. Like, dude's got some wiggle, so he can hurt you through the air and on the ground, but a big-time get for them. Very sneaky get. 18th best quarterback in the portal, according to us here at On 3, but I think that's something we got to keep an eye on because Casey Thompson is not going to, according to his dad, play in spring football. We're ready to go for summer, so that quarterback battle will be decided, it would seem, in fall camp, where Jeff Sims will have gotten a whole spring under his belt, taken a lot of reps with no Casey Thompson. So the plot thickens for Matt Rule and company in Lincoln, Nebraska. Avante Williams, before we got on air, committed to Maryland. Now, he was number 1 safety in the 2020 class. He's from Miami, or was at Miami, rather, transferring from Miami. Good for Maryland. Big-time pickup on the back, and with Avante Williams. Wanted to make sure we talked about that because it broke like a few seconds before we even got on air here. Now, I want to focus on a program who has been on a tear in the portal, and that is the TCU Horned Frogs. Got a lot of guys that I think are kind of flying under the radar, kind of sneaky good gets. JoJo Earl, who we told you the last time we had this segment, there was a lot of buzz around TCU, so not a huge surprise to us here. Was reasonably productive at Alabama. They had high hopes for him. He's from the state of Texas. Not too far from the campus is where he played his high school ball. So JoJo Earl, tons of ability, great in the slot, big-time get. Jack Besh is a guy who played receiver at LSU, is a big-time target, and he really flashed on my radar in the LSU spring game because he had 2 touchdowns, and he was just a jump ball machine. Big body, big target, and what this sums up to me is that receiver room They'll lose Quentin Johnston likely next year to the NFL. Sonny Dykes in that offense, I don't think they're going to lose a step at receiver. Both those guys can play. Both those guys are coming from the highest level of college football in the SEC, so keep an eye on that. Tommy Brockmeyer, another guy transferring from Alabama, offensive tackle, the number 13 offensive tackle in the transfer portal. So TCU, I know they're in the playoff. I know they just played for a Big 12 conference title, and they've got a lot on their plate here with having to go play Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl in a very, very short amount of time, but they are still on offense in the portal, as is Michigan, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, probably another show for another time. But TCU making sure they're continuing to acquire weapons and fill positions that will be needs come spring ball with who they're going to lose. So they're cleaning house right now in Fort Worth. Big time. Very, very big time. Excited to see how this transfer portal continues to play out. I promise we're going to have you covered. Travis Hunter is in the portal. We're going to make sure that you're locked in, that you're loaded for all that is to come with that. All right? So make sure you stay tuned. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.